Hi, everyone. I'm just waiting for my guests to get back into the studio. This is DebraSue with Toledo to the World, and we have a live show tonight with a very promising young person who happens to be an author. He's a comic book author, and I'm just waiting for him to join the room with me. So just sit tight with me for just a second, okay?
Are we good?
Yeah, we are good, and we are live.
Oh, okay, okay.
So yeah, you know what? This is the fun part about being live is you know what? You take it all. You just take it all in stride. You smile a little bit with it. And one thing you can always guarantee yourself is that you're always gonna have something that happens that's unexpected.
Very true, very true.
So anyway, welcome everyone to Toledo with the World with DebraSue. I am DebraSue, your host for tonight, and I am thanking each of you for hanging in there with us past the technical difficulties. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our show tonight because we really have a very good show. I'd like to introduce each and every one of you to Alan Gray. He is a author and he is a comic book developer. Very, very interesting combination that you have there, Alan. Is it okay that I call you Alan?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure because some people have their own way of doing things, so they want to be called, certain names, and when they become famous like you are.
Oh man, I don't care yet, but I'm just real. I just like making comics, man. Just keep it there, keep it simple.
I heard that. I heard that. So listen, what I want to do is I want to hop into you because you are an interesting character to say the least. I do know a couple of authors. I happen to be a publishing company, but you know what? I don't think I know an author who has the type of development that you have. First of all, let's talk about your style of writing. Let's just describe that for me.
Um, well, because I've been making comic books for a while, so
Mm-hmm.
I long term planning is a big thing I do with a story. Like I plan the world first. So if I'm creating like a fictional place, I create the world first. Because how the world functions, the parts of the world, society, civilizations, cultures, that informs 90% of your story.
Mm-hmm.
How, like, why would you grow up this way? What Where would you be at? Why would you be there? Why would you be using this? Like everything's explained with how the world functions. So when
Mm-hmm.
the world functioning in a way I think is dope, the characters just come out of nowhere. They just
So what's your, I mean, I see that's part of your inspiration, but let's talk about how you got started in that because it's not easy to be an author, number one, but then to even get into the comic part of it because you do all of your arts and illustrations, don't you?
yeah.
and some of, pardon me if I have this wrong, but some of your illustrations is kind of dark. And I would imagine that, it has to be interesting. But I looked at some of your characters, and it intrigued me, number one, that you have these characters. It's not anime, it's not, the Looney Tune, it's not Disney, it's a style all your own. How did you come up with that?
Oh, the style. Oh, okay, of drawing. Because I'm a fan of everything. I was a fan
Mm-hmm.
of anime. I was a fan of really comic books growing up, like American comic books, Batman, Superman.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was here. She'll tell you I was a Batman obsessed. I could tell you when Batman came out, Detective Comics 27. I I love Batman, but
Okay.
that love for American comics and anime kind of fused, where I didn't want, like, I took the best parts of both. Like, I wanted my own unique style, because if you look at it, any comic artist or manga artist, they have their own unique way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
You get good at drawing, and then you find out what you're good at and stand out. And I like the heavy shading, deep shadows.
Yeah.
So I always leaned into that. So my stuff tends to be a little darker, because that's just the style that I really like drawing, like those gritty action types of things I grew up on. And so, you know that.
And you're creating your own characters. I don't think I've seen anything like your drawings, number one, which is why I say, for somebody who, grew up in the Disney era, and who grew up in, I think anime came way after me, but for someone who grew up with, and now you have so many different styles, and I'm from the Disney era, and Looney Tunes, and I go way back, and then we come to where we are now. You have to put a lot of thought into these cartoon characters right now, because some of them are so difficult to even understand. Are they really kid characters? Because a lot of them, to me, are adult characters. Number one, would you describe your comic style? Is it for children, or is it targeted to an adult audience?
But that's the funny thing with this book I did now, because this is the first time I ever did something for kids. So this was a gamble for me, because I'm like, most of my stuff is pretty dark, like
Yeah.
content wise.
Hmm.
And I don't try to do that. It's just, I think of a world, and I put a lot of real world politics. I can't help that I do that. It's just,
Right.
I base things, and I watch a lot of stories that are on, whether it's comic books, mangas, or movies, where there's science fiction, but these are very obvious critiques of our world.
Sure.
So it's
And
hard.
do these characters pop up in your dreams, or do you just sit down and design a character and then decide you're going to change it into something? Because for me, I'm an artist too, nowhere near like what you are. But when I start to actually draw shade, I could just draw a shade, and it's almost like the image will pop out at me, and then I kind of follow that image to see what develops, which I'm more imagining most artistic people do.
Hmm.
And I'm kind of surprised by my own art sometimes. But I don't have the kind of dream with the art that you pop up with. So how do you come up with the character, and how do you keep them consistent?
I'm not gonna lie. In my mind, it's like a movie.
Okay.
It's literally, I see every last thing I want in a comic book before I put
Hmm.
paper. I don't. It's always been like that. Like when Grimbone came about, from the fight scenes to the character talking, it's like a movie in my mind, with the characters
Okay.
where they're sitting. And I just got used to just letting my mind flow. When if it's in here this that potently, I just let my
Hmm.
pencil fly. I might add things as I'm drawing it. Well, okay, well maybe they should do this, or because I don't like shortchanging the story either. Like, show them walking to school, show them
Yeah.
their teacher, show them these things, and make it creative. Like, why not? Like,
Yeah. Now your comic book says we first of all, let me read Jonathan's comment. Thank you, J. Cole, for hopping in on. J. Cole is my publicist, so he's always got really good, and he himself is an author, and he's got a book out, in fact. And so his
I,
art is very, very is geared toward all audiences, is what I want to say. But he says comic books aren't always geared for children, and that's true. And he's going into the history of it right now. But he says, contrary to popular belief, there are many comic books that cater to adult audiences, just for people who are fans of good literature. I do believe that, Jonathan. That's true. But when I think of comic books, because I'm older than you guys are, I think of Batman, Spider-Man. The dark characters in there, the Joker and so forth. And then I also remember my dad pulling out the Sunday paper and everybody fought over the comics. And then for those are the classic, square stories where you get like five different drawings of comics and then you
Yeah.
sit down and so your books, do you draw them in full page storyline and then put the storyline in there, or do you indeed do the square where you actually tell a story and you turn a page? I mean, what's your style?
My style of comic book is I treat them more like storyboards. I mean, with comic book, when you're laying on a comic book page, when you're using a full page, a little different from a Sunday paper because you got limited space.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're doing a full page in a comic book, you want to make sure that you're making it easy for the eye to follow, but you're also making it exciting for the eye to follow. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
just put like four squares on paper and drawing them, like yeah, you see the order, but that's not really interesting to read.
Right.
Like I was a fan of Dragon Ball Z, right?
Okay.
Now, Akira Toriyama, RIP, he died. But he was a godfather in what he implemented because of conveying motion, like actually making it look like people are moving through implied
Mm-hmm.
gestures, speed lines. But how he used to lay out his panels, he did it in a Z. So you start here, come here, come here, come here. But instead of
Mm-hmm.
basically the energy beam he shot here leaves here. And if
Mm-hmm.
he fell here, but that's the next panel. So it's making it interesting for you to follow while making it easy for you to follow.
Sure, sure. It
So
sounds to me like not only are you an artist, but you're schooled in what you do, number one, because you have a love of history for how the whole, industry has started. Obviously, you've mentioned a lot of names and even gone back way past your own generation. So I think that's an interesting thing, number one. Now, let me ask you this because it's obvious, and so I'm going to put the question out there. How how do you feel about being one of the few Black artists that have published the type of material that you have? Do you find that you're getting a wide range of acceptance, or are you getting how does that work for you, or do you feel like you have more rejection, or you got to fight a little harder? How do you feel about that?
um maybe it's the spaces I be in, but like because I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of Black comic artists. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're out here. It's like we kind of all support each other, you know.
Yeah.
But as far as for me, I don't really get rejection. I don't like I take honest critique, but if it's just saying, hey, I don't like your stuff because I just don't like it,
Yeah.
you just don't. Like
Yeah.
I don't care. But I've gotten nothing but positive, family, friends, or people just check it out or like the
Mm-hmm.
art, you know.
Sure, sure. I think it's interesting because I'm gonna tell you every time I see, the type of pride I have pride in seeing what people like you do. And I think it's extremely interesting when, you know, you young Black men get into a situation that is unique from maybe some of, let's say, out here, in the eastern part of the United States or whatever, where things are just different. And so I have a good amount of pride in seeing what you're doing because it is kind of unique. I mean, I'm a publisher and I've published for a few folks, but not comics. They're usually tell-all books or self-stories, self-published stories or what have you. But to see this comic thing is really a big thing, just like video games. People think that video games are a multi-million dollar business. And so when we start talking about comic books, I could only imagine that that's probably the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's storytelling. I mean, people like movies. People love
Yeah,
movies.
sure.
But sometimes, like I tell a lot of people, like, hey, if you can't afford to make that movie, make a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Like you don't. There's no budget. Just all you gotta do is find an artist who can what you need to do on page, who can
Yep.
on page, storyboard it, and think that's what a lot of these comic books who get cartoons is what they start as comic books first,
Mm-hmm.
and then they get popular. Then someone say, hey, that should be a cartoon. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like an author. Like I'm pretty sure a lot of authors write their stuff and think of it as a movie, think of the
Sure.
character look like, but you don't have the movie budget. But how much money do you need to make a book?
Right.
So for me, comics a little different because if you can't draw, then you got to find the artist and do that. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that part, because Jonathan mentioned his the guy behind his designs. It's Duty Designs. I guess that's a company. And so he's Jonathan is the writer, and he's probably one of those guys that says, "Hey, I probably am not the best artist in the world, but let me find somebody who is."
Right.
And he made it happen. And that typically I tell everyone, if you have a story to tell, concentrate on the story, because the rest will come later. If you're not an illustrator, we can get you an illustrator. If you want to try your hand at art, then let's go ahead and do that. There's a gentleman here in Toledo, his name is Jody Summers, and Jody actually, by someone else's eye, he may not be the best artist, but as he started to develop his books, his art became quite phenomenal, because his art tells a story. It's kind of all over the place, and everything he writes relates to his poetry and his life, and then it becomes very, very interesting. Hey, Mike. Terry, how are you, honey? Glad to see you. But yeah, Jonathan he's a great author, and I'd like to see more stuff come from him as well. Now, let me ask you, do you ever find when you sit down, because I also work with music artists as well, do you ever find there is a time when you have a block? I know you're not that far into your career, like, volume 20, 21, 22, whatever. But do you ever have a time when you sit down and you really cannot think of how to develop a story?
I wouldn't say a block, but I stopped forcing things years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So like, because this is the first one I put out, but I'm not gonna lie, I have like a million stories I've like laid out, sketched, wrote, and drawn. I don't want to put them out yet until I built momentum. It's like I'd be wasting publishing money. In
Sure.
my, but I always stop the moment I feel like it's not potent. I don't wait to run out of good ideas. I like with Grimbone, I put out one book. I have 13 planned now,
Okay.
but they were all potent ideas I had. Like I was like, yes, yes. Like if it's not 100% I believe in it, I immediately stop and I go to something else.
Sure, sure. Okay. Because a lot of the art itself, the development of the art is quite similar, because I do work with artists, like I said, and sometimes I have a guy who's probably got a library of probably 120 songs. He has the songs there, but it's a matter of how you want to develop them and present them. And sometimes you want them to be different all the time, but sometimes they end up falling into the same category, the same thing, and you get into a rut, and then it's just a repeat of the last situation. And so it takes some forethought. It takes some creativity. Hey, Justin, Tony, welcome to the show, sir. Happy to have you here. And Jonathan says, Ellen and I are collaborating on a near future. It looks like you guys are going to have a project coming up. Little Terry says, what's up, Alan?
What's going on? What's going on, bro, man? Appreciate it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then, because here's an. Are you ever going to write anything with it's going to include like super power female characters?
I make it a mission in any book I do to have a cast of women like 50-50 with men.
Okay.
That's my purpose. So even in the book I'm doing now, I made it a point to have, and I only do that because I grew up with my sister, and me and my sister are big fans of men. And
Sure.
so a lot of the things I do is just for subversion. So like
Mm-hmm.
in Grimbone, one of the main girls, she's the berserker. Berserker,
Mm-hmm.
they're the battle hungry fighter, but
Okay.
she's like this cute little girl who fights with a
Mm-hmm.
spear, but
Okay.
fighting these horrific nightmarish creatures with a smile on her face because she's a battle, some big man doing it. Like I like that juxtaposition. I've always loved having black women be like super women in stories.
Okay, I like to hear that, because
Yeah.
it's only been recently, probably within the last decade or so, that you get these superpower female,
Mm-hmm.
characters written in, and recently they've all been kind of evil characters. But I'm happy to see that we're bringing some heroines back into the situation. And are your ladies, a combination of black, white, yellow, green, whatever, of different ethnicities? Are you focusing on African American superheroes, or how does that go?
Well for me, I'm not gonna lie, like I don't make it my point to draw nothing but black characters, but a lot of my characters are black. Like I ain't that like a lot of them are black, Afro Latino, melanated people. I can't help it. There's a point where I used to draw all the characters I like were white, so I drew white characters. If they're white, I don't care about it that much. But I made it a point that I wanted us to look cool in these stories.
Okay.
I wanted, you know, I grew up, my sister, she was a fan of Storm, Mystique, Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, or Vixen, Catwoman. So, there are a lot of dope female comic book characters.
Sure.
As a nerd, I grew up seeing women dudes through buildings. Comics used to be a real space where a lot of outcasts and marginalized were in before it became popular. So you would see
Mm-hmm.
a lot of characters from these groups that, now they think is forcing diversity. But I grew up with seeing super women battling in stars as a kid. So when I put black women in there, it's just like, yo, I have a daughter, she loves anime. So I'm like, when I make these characters, I'm like, hey, if I'm gonna have the dudes wearing armor with cool battle armor, having cool fight scenes, I could put two shorties in there that
Yeah.
fight scene that are fighting with the fellas, because in real
Sure.
life, if women are in the army, it's to me, it's like making it just nothing but guys has been weird to me.
Sure. Yeah. It
That's not
it
how.
almost makes sense, doesn't it? And Jonathan, he's actually saying the same thing. He's putting his history back in here. First female Captain Marvel, Storm X, okay, of X-Men, and Misty Knight. Yeah, he's all the way behind it. Thank you, Jonathan.
Um,
So
um,
let me ask you this, because this is actually one of the things that I'm interested in. Because obviously you're collaborating with Jonathan. You guys said you guys are going to work on something else. How do you, when we talk about people looking at your book or reading your books or subscribing to hopefully a series that you're going to have come into, when you get criticism, does that cause you to go back and change your character development, or will you write something different? How do you learn from criticism when people apply it to your comments, or even they may say, hey, well, this, that, and the third, I didn't, this is what you could do better. I mean, do you let people veer you off course, or do you pretty much stay consistent with what you do?
um, with any story, I have a very clear plan. But it's also a plan that's like it's long. It's a long. It's a long plan. So in the in between, they say, hey, take a little long to get to certain points. I might have to
Mm-hmm.
spice stuff up. I might have to add some stuff in here, make it a little more exciting. Um,
Sure.
so that's the fun part when I have an overall plan, but then when the fans are reading it, hey, I like this. I want to see more of this. So I'm like, okay, lean into that a little bit. Um,
Sure.
but hey, give us some downtime, get to know the characters. Okay, lean in.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of wrote it with that in mind. Like
Sure.
playing a story good enough, you kind of give people a bit of everything. Like, hey, they may be into this, so tease it, let them get to know everybody, give them a little more teases, let them enjoy the world, and then start subverting things and things like that. But I love feedback. I embrace it.
So how many books have you released so far? How many comic books have you released?
As me being the sole author and writer, this is my very first one in Grimbone. But
Okay.
collaborating with people, I've been collaborating with people like almost 10 years.
Okay.
Um, uh, with John, one of his clients he gave me my first shot, and I always say this: art was kind of butt. I'm not even gonna lie to you. And,
Okay.
well, I always could design characters, but the paneling was trash. I wasn't
Yeah.
really it. It wasn't it. But he gave me a chance. So
Yeah.
I worked with another dude, one of my homie Caleb Lapsley, and we did our own manga. We put like 300 pages on Amazon. Jack came in Amazon and worked with another dude with ADR Comics, and
Mm-hmm.
Yonder issue 1 and 2. They're on Amazon as well. Like all of these,
Sure.
Jack came in, Melody Crown. I did the artwork for Yonder, and these are all black authors. I mean,
Sure.
working with independent authors.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah,
I love that. I love to hear that, and I hear the experience in your voice, and I'm happy to hear that. Will there ever come a time that you will work with young people, maybe in universities or in high schools, and encourage them, or would you encourage young people to do something like this? That's probably the bigger question. And if so, how would you encourage them to get started?
Um, I would always encourage young people to get into creating stories, and if you draw, to work with people. Because when I started doing comic books, it was fun. It was
Hmm.
fun thinking of worlds and characters and designing them and make them look like this. And I like working with writers. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I don't want to be the guy coming up with stories. I like to be the guy that just give me something to draw. Like I want to, I'll draw this, because what I like to do in the community was to be affordable. Like I don't think I'm the best artist in the world,
Okay.
but I know I was good enough to where most people think I'm super expensive. But I made it a point,
Oh.
if I talk to kids, hey, I'll do a book with one of y'all. I just want to see your story. Just write it.
Yeah,
We'll help develop it. It's not, it's bigger than the money. It's collaborative. It's us
sure.
all making a product together. We're all
Yeah.
marketing it together. We all got equity in it. We put in blood and tears into it.
Yes.
So I tell
So
all
is
kids,
this something when a young person comes to you and says, "Hey, that's something that I want to do." Is this something that you say, "Well, it's a craft you have to have a job to support it, because let's face it, you have publishing fees, you have artist fees, you have, production fees. So obviously, you got to have a source of income unless you have rich parents.
being
Um
a starving artist is the worst thing to do trying to do comic books.
mhm.
Get your life together. Like, make sure your life together, because then you're creating stories from a comfortable space. I've done the starving artist thing.
Yeah.
It's fun. Like, you can brag, oh, I paid my bills with art this month. Yeah, but that was all your money. Like, you were but definitely, I got myself stable, got my life together. I'm definitely in a much better headspace creating.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't caught up on the conversation yet, this is Alan Gray. He is a comic book author. He is promoting his latest book called Grimbone. It's kind of a dark comic, although it is, I want to say PG-13. I I say PG-13 because it's not just the fun stuff. You do have to put some thought into it because it's a storyline to it. It's just like any of the Marvels and all the series that come after that, the Black Panthers and all of that. You really need to catch it from the beginning to catch up to the end. I mean, if you get in the middle of a series, you got to go back to the beginning. So, for those of you, even the youngsters who can comprehend that, good for you. This is the book for you. Let's talk about um, promoting. How are you handling the promotion of the book?
Um, Again, I've been working with John. He's been helping me promote a lot. And I was already promoting it because I had my Patreon last year when I started.
Mm-hmm.
I was releasing it on Patreon because I made it like a challenge that every month I'm gonna do an issue. So every
Okay.
issue. So all three issues on my Patreon. So
Okay.
I'll issue one on to publish it, but I'm seeing the response to the first one, and then I'm gonna start dropping the rest of them. But two, and that's how I wanted to do it, to finish them in advance, see
Uh-huh.
them, and then start dropping them.
Okay. So now mention that one more time for people who want to find you. They can find your books on Patreon. Let's talk about how to get there.
Oh yeah, just Patreon .com or BlackGodComics. You can search that up anywhere. That's gonna pull me up. That's my tag on any social media, BlackGodComics. And
Okay.
Patreon, not only is it just Grimbone, it's any story I've worked on is on my Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you got now how do they access it? Do they have to pay a fee to access it or how's that
it,
work on
it's
Patreon?
simply $5 a month.
Okay. Yeah, and then your book is on Amazon, so you guys can go buy it on Amazon or you can go just keep in touch with the series. And Patreon is actually a good platform if you're doing other things too. It's not just a one item type platform. You can do many things on Patreon. It's a big deal right now, you guys. So if you're looking for different ways to express your artistry, however, whatever you're into, sales or whatever you do, Patreon is an excellent
Yeah,
platform to do that. And so but I will also tell you, being the business person that I am, the business manager that I am, as far as the industry is concerned, make sure you have your business in order before you put it out online. Okay. And that means copyrights, people.
Nick,
Make sure you protect your work. Make sure everything you put out there is legally protected and not by the poor man's copyright. Go to the government and get it done the right way because that's what counts in a court of law. Okay.
anything of an intellectual property on social media unless the paperwork is right.
There
Any
you go.
sketches and commissions.
That's right. You are my kind of guy because you got it down already. So I'm so happy to hear that you understand that and you've actually put it into action. That's what counts. So we are at the 6:35 hour. My show is a half hour show. I feel like I could talk to you for another half an hour. But what I'm going to give you an opportunity to do right now is to give you shout outs and to let people know where they can find your material. And let's talk about maybe your future endeavors.
Okay. I'm making fast. I'm trying to make sure
You're
kids say.
fine. You're fine.
But the anywhere in Black Dog Comics, Instagram. I don't have my Facebook page anymore. So Instagram, TikTok, out of artists. I have a website now, blackgodcomics.com. So if you are a writer and you do not have an artist, you can email me. Again, my price is set on the website. However, email me, talk to me. I promise you, I will work with you. I'm not that guy. It's not my price. If you want to do a payment plan, I work with artists. It's bigger than the money sometimes. If you
Mm,
only got one, you only got enough for one page, do that. But Black God
mhm.
Comics, you can reach me. It'll take you straight to my email and and a Patreon, the Black God Comics. That's the number one way you can find me.
So, all you aspiring folks out here who are trying to get into comic book writing or whatever type of, I want to gear in on that because this is what this gentleman does. He just gave you so much game right now. He just gave you have absolutely no excuse not to get done what you would like to get done. And I have often said to people who come to me and they want to write a book, it's like, do it now, do it now. Stop procrastinating. And if you have an idea, because you never know what's going to take off, you guys, you may have something that, whatever you have, I can guarantee you this: somebody somewhere is going to be interested in it. Okay, somebody's going to be interested in it. I am extremely interested in this young man, this black man, this businessman. I'm extremely interested and excited to see what he is doing because many of you are kind of stuck in a rut since COVID. You have to spread your wings and start looking into doing other things and just rebranding yourself. And whether it's writing or it's publishing or it's doing online shows or running around and doing the pop-up show, whatever it is, you guys, we're at that point right now where it's absolutely essential as business folks and as entrepreneurs that you have to constantly uh you know change what you do about yourself. You have to constantly evolve and just be that person that adapts to everything that comes your way. So now he gave you game. If you're interested in doing this, he said reach out to him. If you want to get on a payment plan, and don't get into this thing to scam somebody, because some business people know if you're serious or not, okay? Because you probably will also sign a contract. So if you are serious, as they say, serious inquiries only, okay? If you're really serious and you really are, this is something you really want to do, reach out to Alan because he obviously he does this. So there you go. You have game with that. Um, Jonathan Coleman, I have to give you so many kudos, sir, on what you do. I do appreciate you bring some of the best artists to my table, and I'm telling you, it doesn't seem like 38 minutes have passed already. Yeah, it's already passed through, and I'm absolutely okay with that because if there's anything else, I don't want to miss anything for you, Alan. If you have something else to say, Justin Tony says, "I am proud of you, bro."
And
Experience your growth since we met over 12 years ago. Yes, everybody go to the network and collaborate and support Alan Gray. Go get this comic book, you guys. Go read it, download it, and you never know what it might inspire you to do as well.
yeah, man. All I gotta say is, just to close out, Grimbone is just one of many books and stories. The end of this year, I have a vampire Lord of the Rings story called Blood.
Wow.
So it's funny you say my stuff is dark because that is.
Yeah.
but but for the if you are a fan of Lord of the Rings, if you're a
Yeah.
fan of vampires, and if people know me, if you're a fan of just like insane action, insane amount
Yeah.
of action,
Yeah. I'll tell you something. Some of those stories I couldn't get into, and some of them came out, and I was actually surprised at how good they were. I'm one of those people, if I hear bumping tonight, I'm kind of like, what on earth was that? So to go see scary movies and read scary books and stuff, it's kind of one of those things. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Let me just kick back and think about that one, but your storylines are interesting, and I think if you guys and most of you guys, you people are into video games, okay? If you're into video games, this is something that you would also get into, honestly, if you're a little bit squeamish, then maybe not. Maybe this may not be for you, you know what I'm saying? But definitely go support the artwork of your local artists. I say support local art because without our support, it's just a book that sits on a shelf, you guys. It gives the author pride, but it is a book that sits on a shelf. So go and support your local artists, whatever genre they are doing right now. So at this time, we're gonna go ahead and close out the show. I want to thank you again, Alan, for being with me on Toledo to the World with Deborah Sue. DebraSue. It was a pleasure having you on my platform. When you are ready to release your second book, make sure you come back, okay? Or if you happen to slide through Toledo on your book signing tour, make sure you come, and I'd be more than happy to work with you on that.
Definitely. When we get there, I'm probably gonna hit you up as soon as we get there.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. All right, everybody, we're going to end the show for tonight. I'd like to thank all of my Roku viewers, all of my YouTube viewers, and of course, the social media platform viewers, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. All of you guys, you're wonderful for supporting me. I do appreciate each and every one of you. Tune in next week. We have a really good show, a couple of really good artists. As in the past, all of my guests have been good. I can't say any of them have, you guys. They're from afar. We like to talk about Toledo with the rest of the world, but we also bring people into the Toledo arena so that you all know what's happening outside of Toledo. We're not, we're not secluded. We are one big United Nations, the United World. And so get in here, learn what's happening with the rest of the world, and maybe someone here might inspire you to do something great. That's what we're here for. Join me next week, same time, same back channel, as we say. And until then, you all take care of yourselves, and we will see you all next week. Take care, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alan.
No problem. You have a good one.
Okay. You too. Bye bye.